So I texted Christian last night and I asked him, what was a good story in the Bible that kind of talks and hits on uh, making a bad decision that can lead to another bad decision that can lead to another bad decision. And to be honest with you, he actually gave me the idea when we were standing back, and he asked me, he's like, "What are you going to preach on?" I said, "I have no idea. I'm not ready whatsoever." And we started talking, and quicksand came into my mind simply because I was standing in a pile of sand. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's actually a good thing to speak on. And quicksand is basically, it's a perfect combination of sand, water, and air that can't support any weight. But that's not entirely what I'm talking about. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie The Replacements. It's a great movie. I love it. But Keanu Reeves said that he was scared of quicksand, and when he was talking about it, they were like, "Oh yeah, that's some scary stuff." But he said, "No, what I mean is I'm scared of when you're out there on the field, you make a decision that may have not been the best decision. It leads to a bad event. That gets stuck in your head. The next time it comes to make a decision, you make another bad decision, another one, and another one. And before you know it, you feel like you are so deep and you're so just engulfed by quicksand, you can't move." So Christian gave me the scriptures for David and Bathsheba. And I never really read in detail everything that had taken place in this, and realized, there were several things that David did that if he hadn't have done, it may not have happened the way it went down. But we're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 11, and we're going to start with verses 1. And I'm going to read a little note that I've gotten here. King David was arguably the greatest king that Israel had had. He ruled over the largest territory. And then the Israelites and the nation prospered with David like they had never done before. And a lot of it was simply because he was favored by God. He was put there by God. And even someone of David's stature, like Christian, Amanda, myself, the other leaders of the church, even someone who is appointed in a leadership position, or not even that, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone falls short from the glory of God. The Bible tells you that. But my first point is being in the wrong place at the wrong time. If we read chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rahab, but David remained in Jerusalem." Now my point is wrong place, wrong time, simply because David was not where David was supposed to be. He was supposed to be in battle with his men. He was supposed to be doing what leaders do. Being prior military, it was hard for me to listen to an officer instinct that comes straight out of college, when I had already been in the service, I had already been fire baptized, and then you're going to come out of college and tell me I need to do this. Yeah, I don't think so, buddy. So instead of doing what David was supposed to be doing, leading his men as a true king should do, he decided he wanted to take a vacation and stay home and just chill for a little while. Well, everything that happens in this passage is a result of him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I don't know how many of you have been in that situation. I have plenty of times. I've been places I shouldn't have been. I knew when I was going there, this is going to lead to something bad. I'm going to end up doing something stupid. But hey, whatever, I'm going to go do it anyway. Because of being in the wrong place, a door for sin was opened. David allowed, whether he knew it or not, for a little bit of sin to just kind of get its foothold in what was going to take place from then on. My second point is keeping your eyes open or keeping your eyes closed. And I say that simply because, let's read verse 2. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. And we're going to pause right there. So he's up walking around. He's not really doing anything wrong. He's not really, sinning. He's just walking around on his roof. Now, Bathsheba is the woman. She was bathing herself, and David happened to see her. Now, the website Christian gave me, the author of the articles had a great point. He was saying that it's hard to know whether at this point it was David's fault or it was her fault, because she was bathing on basically her rooftop where anybody in the palace could have seen her. And her husband, being a soldier, she would know David was home. If we lived in a community where we had a king or a leader, I think we would probably make a point to know when he was going to be around and when he wasn't, just so we didn't do something stupid and get ourselves killed. I would think we would know that. So I think she knew what she was doing, but that's just my personal opinion. And my point, eyes open, eyes closed. When he saw her, instead of turning away, and this will be his second mistake. His first mistake was not being where he was supposed to be. His second mistake was, instead of turning away and stop looking at this woman like, wow, she is gorgeous, he stared at her and let his mind start going and playing all these little theatrical things in his head. And it is in Job 31, 1. The Bible talks about that, about having a covenant with your eyes. It says, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a girl. So that right there was a critical mistake made by David. Not only was he not where he was supposed to be, not only was he not doing his kingly duty, but now he's broken a covenant with God, and he's looking at another man's woman with the desire of sleeping with her. If you read the next verse in 2 Samuel, which will be verse 3, after he looked at her and realized, I want this woman, David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Elam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Okay, my third point. listen and use common sense. The Lord, we have what we like to call a conscience. The Lord gives us insight, not only from other people, but within us also. In your heart, in your gut, you know what is right and wrong. And I say listen and use common sense because it says right here, David sent someone to find out about the woman. So David sent and told his servant. The servant came back and told David, he's like, she's already the wife of Uriah, one of your soldiers. He was telling David right there, she is already married. Leave it alone. Well, David's the king, right? He doesn't have to listen. I can do what I want. I'm the king. So he ignored him, obviously, and sent messengers to bring her to him, and they slept together. And there was another part in the article where they were like, again, it doesn't tell you whether in the scriptures Bathsheba fought back or resisted. And that I don't know. I mean, if you are a servant of the king and the king brings you to his castle and he wants you and you know he wants you, I mean, are you really, going to try to say no? And that point, I think the odds were against her. It was going to happen whether she wanted it to or not. And that would be David's third mistake. The Lord tried to stop him with his servant. And David, being the king, I would think, thought that he was bigger than the individual who was trying to warn him and said, I don't have to listen to reason. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to get what I want, and nothing is going to stop me. So he did. David ignored him. They slept together. And in 2 Samuel, verse 4, David sent messengers to her. She came to him, and they slept together. She had purified herself from her uncleanliness. Then she went back home. Verse 5, the woman conceived and sent word to David saying, I am pregnant. Maybe David wasn't aware of the fact that if you sleep with a woman, you can get her pregnant. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he would know that. So now when he gets word, he's scratching his head. He's like, we've got a problem. Yeah. You do. You've got one of your soldiers' wives pregnant, or wife pregnant while he's off battling or in a war that you're supposed to be leading. So now he's scratching his head trying to figure out what he needs to do. My point 4 is the truth is lighter than your sin. And what I mean by that is if you do something wrong, if you make a mistake, it is a lot easier to repent to God and ask for forgiveness from Him and whoever it is that maybe you have done the wrong to than it is to hold that sin in and then try to hide it. Because in doing that, not only are you basically killing yourself, you're not going to allow the Lord to be able to use you like He wants because you're holding on to something. You're holding on to what you did. It's going to weigh you down. It's going to be an anchor around your neck that's going to take you all the way to hell. I've been there. I've made plenty of mistakes that I held on to for years. And that's why I honestly believe I'm not further along in the Lord like I should be, because I was not allowing Him to work in my life because I was unwilling to let go of things that I had done in the past. If David had it came clean told her husband what had happened, yes, obviously there would be some hard feelings, but then, and that point on, the Lord could have started mending things and changing things so the outcome of this story isn't as sad and as tragic as it turns out to be. But instead of telling the truth, David decided to cover his tracks instead. You can read in 2 Samuel verses 6 through 11. Basically, it says, David sent word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him, how was Joab? How was the soldiers? And how was the war going? Then David said to him, go to your house, wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and the gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the palace with all the master's servants and did not go home to his house. When David was told this, Uriah did not go home. He asked him, haven't you just come from a distance? Why did you not go home? So basically what David was doing there, he was trying to get a man who had been, I'm not sure how long they had been gone, but it's been a considerable amount of time, away from his wife. David was trying to get him to go back home, clean up, and sleep with his wife so that they would think that it was his baby. Well, I really, in reading this story and praying about it last night, I really realized how much I respect and like Uriah. This was probably one of the noblest men that I've heard of. Not only would he not go home, and you can continue reading verses and verses of David. He not only did he not go home the first night, then David invited him back to try to get him drunk and convince him, go home from here. He wouldn't do it. He told David, he said, why on earth would I go home and have the comfort of my home, have the comfort of my wife, when my men, when my masters, when your men are out fighting and dying, what right do I have to have the comfort of going home? Again, all David had to do when all this happened was say, listen, I messed up. I'm trying to convince you to do these things because I made a mistake. So, this would be point 5. Sin has a cost of the blood of the innocent. Every sin, no matter how small, comes at a cost. And it always comes at the cost of innocent people. Always. And if you don't believe me, look at Christ. He did nothing, and yet his blood was shed for our sins. Sin comes at the cost of the blood of the innocent. A little bit further down, you can read in verse 14 of chapter 11, when all the attempts that David had tried to get him to go back home and convince him, basically to trick him into sleeping with his own wife, when all that failed, David finally said, I'm washing my hands of this, and I'm going to do something I know would solve this issue. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fierce or fiercest. Then withdraw from him so that he would be struck down and die." So not only was David a coward and didn't go to war, doing what he was supposed to be doing as a king, then walked around on his roof and saw a woman that was not his to touch, regardless king or not. Took her, slept with her, got her pregnant, then tried to trick her own husband into sleeping with her as to cover his tracks. He has got to the point now where I'm just going to have him killed to protect myself. And like I said, my point here, sin comes at the cost of the blood of the innocent. Not only did Uriah die, he did die, but several innocent other people died because of David's actions. Now, so not only one person, but Joab wrote him and told him, not only him, several of your men, several dozen, he said. So at least 25 people died because of David's actions. All David had to do, if he didn't want to be in war, so be it. For point one, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, all he had to do was look away and ask the Lord to give him strength. But instead, he was caught in the quicksand and didn't even realize it. He didn't even realize that he was caught and he was sinking way too fast. Every move he made, every decision he made, every hard turn he tried to make to get out, he just sunk himself deeper and deeper until he got to the point where he was so engulfed by it. He's like, what is an innocent life? It means nothing to me as long as I can get out of the situation that I'm in. The conclusion of my message, if you haven't repented and trusted in God for anything that that maybe is holding you back or maybe stopping you, or things that have happened in the past that maybe you may not even have done, but just hurts, or things that you're holding on, that you're letting be in the way. If you haven't repented and trusted in God, then you will pay for your own sins. And without Christ, that payment is going to last forever. The Lord came and He died for our sins. He took all of them away. And in the story, He gave David plenty of opportunities. He gave David plenty of opportunities to look and say, I've made a mistake. Lord, please help me out of the situation that I'm in. And instead of doing that, David just kept fighting it and kept fighting it. And in the end, the Lord sent Nathan and tells David this story of basically a rich man and a poor man. The rich man had tons of cattle, tons of calves. The poor man had one lone lamb, and he raised it as his own. It slept. He held it in his arms. He slept with it. He treated it as his own daughter. And a stranger came to the rich man, and instead of taking one of his calves, even though he had tons of livestock, he stole the calf of the poor man and killed it and prepared it for the supper. And David was so furious when Nathan told him this. And he said, oh, he should pay for it 4 times over and just, he should die. And Nathan told him, he said, well, that's you. Amen. That's you. Yes. The Lord gave you all that you have. Yes. He delivered you from Saul. He delivered you from the things that you were going through. And in return, you basically spat at him and stole what he did not give you. What was not yours to take. So church, I urge you, if you feel that there are things going on, or when you're presented with an opportunity or a decision, if it doesn't work out, or if it leads to something that shouldn't have happened, don't hold on to it. Let it go. Amen. Don't get to the point where you're like David and you have sunk so far in the sand, you don't see any way out. Because one sin leads to another sin, leads to another sin. And the smallest white lie, before you know it, you are having to lie about everything in your life. I can kind of hit on it a little bit. It's not nearly as dramatic as what happened with David, but with my job situation, I made a change that I thought was better for my family. That change ended up being a disaster. And I prayed and I'm like, Lord, I need your help. I need your help. Then I don't necessarily know if the Lord had brung it, which I know now he didn't. But another opportunity came and I'm like, well, this is not working out. I'm going to take this one. And that turned out to be a disaster. So we had like 3 months of a very unsteady income. And I got a lot more gray hair. You can't tell now because I got gel in there to make it look brown or black. But that 3 months, I got so much more gray hair because I was like, oh, Lord, what am I going to do? I can't even go to the store and buy a gallon of milk. And I just really, really prayed. And I was like, God, I need your help. I need you to help me because I felt like I was in quicksand. I felt like I was at the point where I couldn't provide for my family and we were struggling. And the Lord opened the doors. He brought a new job in. So please, put your faith in God. Regardless of what you're going through, regardless of the decisions that you've made, don't let the quicksand overtake you. Because Christ, He's already paid the price. It's not worth any more innocent lives.